Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us here. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Jenny Landon, and Jenny is the founder and executive director of Growing Out of Darkness and author of Growing Through Grief. Her passion for mental health and wellness breathes through every aspect of her life. But it is the connection that she builds with her audience where this passion is so profoundly experienced. Jenny's ability to transform her story into a poetic message of love and wisdom is one of the many things that sets her apart. The eloquence in her words delivered with a fire for life really reaches both the minds and the hearts of her audience. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us here today. It is such an honor and privilege.
Oh, well, Asherah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being brought into this event and hopefully helping people that are really in need.
Absolutely. And so what brought you to your work with the bereaved?
Oh my goodness, excuse me 1 second. I'm not used to the home phone ringing. For me, and actually now that I say that, I'm gonna turn off my cell phone too. I got into this really because I lost my dad to suicide on June 2nd, 1999. And, when I lost him, my whole world shattered. I'm one of 6 children, and of everyone in my family, my dad was who I was closest to.
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't understand what happened. This was a man who had so much strength and charisma and love and dedication to his family and to his community, and his death in no way reflected who he was as an individual.
Yeah.
And so for me, like after he passed away and I was able to have the summer to kind of regroup, and I was fortunate to have really great people in my life to help me get there. I returned to school and I explained to all of my professors what had happened over the summer. And I was actually in the process of getting my degree in psychology when he died. And so it was one of these, like, how did I miss the signs? How did I not realize how bad he was, how sick he was? And I was really fortunate. My instructors really opened a lot of doors for me and pushed me in ways that hurt a lot, but were really good for me, And I didn't think when he died, I didn't think like, oh, I'm going to go help other people. It was, I was in significant grief. My life felt like it had just ended. The one person in my life who I knew loved me more than anything was gone. But about 15 years after my dad passed away, and I had gone through a lot of different modalities of healing, a friend of mine reached out to me and let me know that 2 of her friends had each lost a loved one to suicide that week. And she wanted to know if I would be willing to write them a letter of hope, letting them know that healing was possible.
What a beautiful gesture.
Yeah. And when I got her message, I remember being in complete awe, kind of like, wow, like that's, to be asked to do something like that, it was very humbling, very, am I capable of doing that? Right.
Yeah.
And so I kind of sat with it, it's not something I just jumped into. I kind of sat with it. And then about 3 weeks later, I called her and I said, hey, just, I haven't forgotten you and I am working on this, but I don't know where to stop. And so I sent her what I was working on, and she called me back and she said, don't stop. You have a message that needs to be heard. And so, yeah, I ended up writing a book called Growing Through Grief. And it's really my journey of healing. It's the things that I went through and really sharing my personal story all the way through, as well as tools that people can use. They were the exercises my teachers put me through. They were the programs that I was attended a specialized 8-week process group that I think very few people will ever have the opportunity to experience something so powerful and beautiful. And again, painful. It was painful. And so I took all of those experiences, everything that I had been through, the lessons I learned from various support groups and just life. And I just kind of poured my heart and soul right into that book. And then I realized it was going to be a book. Like it was real, you know, and that we were getting it published. And so that's how I actually ended up starting my nonprofit, which is called Growing Out of Darkness. And I started it because I believed that no one should be alone when they're going through this kind of pain, and no one should have to pay to feel supported. And so the reason I chose to be a nonprofit was to be able to raise money to donate these books to anyone in need.
That is so beautiful. What an incredible resource to all suicide survivors in particular, but to anyone who's lost someone. And the place that you're coming from is so extraordinarily generous. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I'm curious, when you look at society as a whole and maybe just our culture in America, what comes to mind as something we can do better and how we hold grief?
Well, I would say number one is stop looking for the perfect response. Stop looking for people to have the perfect response. You know, I learned in college, and I think it really stuck with me because I had just lost my dad. But one of the classes that I took was on bereavement and healing. And I remember my professor said in the very first class of that semester said, we as a culture here in the United States have not been taught how to grieve.
It's so
And
true.
yeah, you know, I mean, there's a lot of other cultures, they have a whole ritual that they do that can last months. And we kind of have this like, oh, that happened, and oh my gosh, I don't know what to say, and oh, let me think of like what should I say, and let me be here for you, and then like after a couple weeks, are you still thinking about that? Like, is that is that still a problem? You know, it's just this kind of like I don't want to say everyone is insensitive, but there is, I think part of it too is the way we live, this rush, you know, move forward, move.
Yes.
When you've lost someone you love, grief is its own entity. You know, it is not something we get to control. It's not something we get to manage. It's something we need to experience.
Yes. That's so true. And I appreciate all that you've just named and how we can better support one another, and that there is really no perfect way to do that. I think sometimes we fear the quip sayings of "so sorry for your loss" or what have you, and there's no right or wrong way to do this. It's just our intention and our ability to be present with people.
Exactly. And so what I tell people when they come to me and ask me, you know, what should I say? Like a friend of mine just lost someone to suicide and I don't know what to say or what to do. And what I try to encourage people to do is just sit with it, right? And then approach the person from a place of love. Yeah. And as long as you are approaching them from a place of love, you can feel good about what you said or what you did. Yeah. Now, the thing I want everyone to understand is that person is hurting. They are grieving. So even though you may be approaching them from a place of love, they may not be able to receive it the way you want them to.
Such a good point.
And right. And what I try to encourage people, because I've been that person, I've been the person who's grieving. I've been the person who walked into my family home that growing up, again, 6 children, chaotic environment. You know, we always had friends. We always had exchange students. It was never quiet. And I walked into my childhood home after learning about my dad's death, and it was just silence. And I walked in and I didn't know where anyone was. And I look up and this man is walking towards me. And I recognize, I didn't know what his role was, but I recognized him as someone from my parents' church. And he came up and he embraced me and he said, "Your dad isn't going to hell." And I was like, "Oh, why would you say that?" Right? And I was so upset and I pulled away from him and I was ready to start screaming. And fortunately, all 3 of my brothers actually walked in right at that moment and they all just kind of took me and embraced me. And I never addressed this man. And honestly, for nearly 17 years, I held on to that as anger. Like I was like, this guy, how dare he? And it was while I was working on the book. In fact, it was right before I was getting it published. I had a really good friend of mine read through it and just to give me some edits. And she knew me from my childhood, and she also is a psychologist, and I just wanted to get her feedback. And we were discussing the situation, and she said, you know what, Jenny, I think in that moment, he was doing the best he could. He was trying to comfort you in the way he thought he should.
Yeah.
And it was the way that she said it that made me go, oh my gosh, you're right. I don't think he was trying to insinuate anything. Like in that moment, I couldn't receive it as that. And I held on to it for 17 years. And so this is where I will tell people, if you are grieving and someone comes to you, try to receive them from a place of love. Try to recognize they are doing the best they can. And at least they're showing up and they're trying to be there for you.
Which super, super duper matters. Just the act of showing up says and speaks volumes, even if it's awkward, even if we don't know what to say. Just our willingness to sit in the fire with a beloved who has lost someone speaks volumes.
Yeah. And I would say, that immediate, like a lot of times people get inundated in the immediate first few days. It's the weeks and sometimes months later that we really need someone to reach out to us and say, hey, want to go grab coffee? Right? Not just a how are you, but let's go do something. Let's go be together and then check in, then ask them how they're doing. But that invitation to go and be and to be loved and received, no pressure on have you moved on, but just let's go be together. It's really important. We need that.
We do. Just that presencing, that willingness to be present with somebody and to witness them in their grieving process is everything. And you're right, having been a hospice care volunteer, like that whole first year, especially of anniversaries, is so hard, and it goes well beyond the first month or so of the acute loss and the acute grief.
Yeah, no, I actually found in all of my research and time going to support groups. So I have lived all over the country as well as internationally. So I've been exposed to a lot of different people and cultures. And what I have found really is the second year tends to be the hardest. And it's, the first year I feel like you're in shock. And it's this disbelief and there's a great deal of sadness and weight that's on you. But the second year is when it's starting to sink in. It's starting to be real. And that sadness, it evolves in, and it's tough. Not that if anyone's in the beginning stages, I don't want to freak you out. Right. But it's also allow it. I think that's a big thing is we try to control our emotions, or we try to say, well, why am I feeling this way today? Yesterday, I was laughing and I was happy.
Right. That's such an interesting phenomenon when you're grieving, right? It's so easy to judge yourself or somebody else and be like, you almost feel like you can't smile because that wouldn't be honoring your beloved. But some days you're just happy and you don't know why. And other days you're in the trenches and you don't know why. And
Yeah. And that's okay. Right. It's, I always tell people, like, there is no right or wrong emotion. The only time we have to worry is when that emotion becomes so intense that there's potential for self-harm or harming others. That's when you go, okay, whoa, like, let's take a step back and let's get some intervention here. But emotions can be extreme. They can be debilitating. And, and I think that's to segue into, like, when do we get help? When has our grief become so much that we can't handle it on our own? And I would encourage people, in all honesty, after being through everything I've been through, is don't wait to be in a position of I'm not functioning. Right. And so for me, I was just incredibly fortunate that after my dad died, I began having panic attacks. And it was pretty sudden. Like, it was like, he died in June. I went back to school end of August. And my very first train ride, I was in San Francisco and I'm on the Muni train. And one stop before we were getting to the school, I couldn't breathe. Right. Yeah. And I had no idea what was going on. And it's when the train is the most packed too. And so I didn't know if it was a claustrophobia thing. I had no idea. But I began having these extreme panic attacks, and I was lucky, not lucky. I was blessed that a girl that was in my class saw what I was going through, and she encouraged me to try acupuncture. And at first I was like, no. I don't know about all of this. And I don't like doctors at all. And this is what I said. She's like, no, this isn't a doctor. Like, trust me. And it really took her getting the appointment set up for me because I was very resistant. And then it was so funny because even when I went in for my first appointment, I'm sitting there with this acupuncturist and we're talking about all the things to expect. And then he says, okay, so should we give it a shot? And I'm like, she'll go, I don't know. Let me go ask. Right. And so I had just also gotten married. And so I went out to the lobby to my husband and I was like, he wants to know if we should actually do a session now. Like, what do I say? You know? And my husband's like, yeah, that's why we came here. But again, that's part of grief, right? Like, nothing makes sense. For me, nothing was making sense. I didn't feel confident making decisions. It was just like a constant swirl of emotions. And, but yeah, I definitely think when we go through extreme situations, you know, finding something that helps our bodies to maintain balance. And some of those things we can do on our own. You know, I'm a big believer in Tai Chi meditation. I'm not a huge fan of yoga. No offense to any yogis out there, but I'm 6 feet tall and I just don't stretch much beyond that. So it's very embarrassing to do a yoga class. Mm-hmm. But I do believe there are things we can do within our own home and within our own space that can help us to stay centered, help us to stay balanced. But when we go through something extreme, it is not uncommon for us to need the support of someone else. Mm-hmm. And, you know, for me, for years, I told everyone acupuncture, it's the way to go. But I then had 2 daughters who went through their own issues who hate acupuncture. And so we've had to learn, like we've done fork tuning, we've done Reiki, we've done Native American healing rituals. We have tried just about everything at this point, and finding what works for you, finding what helps you to be able to feel at peace within yourself, to feel calm. And that was the thing for me with the acupuncture. And it's not one session. So please, if you're going to do this, it's a process, right? There's a lot of upheaval going on in our bodies. It's going to take time, you know? And so I was going, and what I realized was it didn't just stop my panic attacks. It actually helped me feel at peace for the first time in my life. Like, I had never known what that felt like. Mm-hmm. was to be able to sit in a space and not feel anxious or jittery. Like, I didn't even realize how anxious I was until I felt at peace.
Yeah. I so love that you're boosting acupuncturists and acupuncturists. That's wonderful. And I also appreciate that, yeah, it's not the right modality for everybody, and that you had the flexibility to meet your daughters in their own style. And so what are a couple of tools that you would recommend to our audience when they're facing their own grieving process, something that they might be able to put to use in the here and the now?
Well, I would say, especially if you're at home and you're in distress and you just feel like I need to do something, but I don't know where to even begin. Mm-hmm. Writing letters, honestly, is one of the best things that I ever did. I wrote letters to my dad. I wrote letters to myself. Writing letters to my dad was incredibly powerful. And it really helped me to release a lot of what I was holding on to. So that, for one, is a really big piece of healing that even today, I mean, you know, it's now, for me, it's been 21 years since I lost my dad. But even when I go through difficult moments now, like, I've learned, if I'm really overwhelmed, for me to sit down and I personally do find that pen to paper can be very therapeutic. But sometimes I don't have pen to paper, right? Sometimes I'm on my phone in notes, right? Or sending myself an email. I email myself all the time.
I have a friend who did that. I'm like, that's so cool. I never thought of doing that, but now I do, and it is helpful.
Yeah, and it's nice too, because in email you can actually do a search, right, for whatever word, and it'll it'll
Bring
pop
it
up.
up.
So yeah, I email myself all the time. But anytime, I'm struggling with another individual, I think sometimes like our anger, when we're grieving, our anger can become a very strong emotion for a lot of people. And it's not always just anger at the person who died, which I never actually experienced anger with my dad.
Right.
I was angry with myself. I was angry with God. I was angry with my mom. But through the years, my mom and I had already had an unhealthy relationship before my dad died, and it was amplified after he passed away. And I used that tool to write letters to her that I never sent.
They got it up and out of you, right?
Yeah. And the thing is that sending the letters would not have helped, and I think that that's one of the things that sometimes we feel like we have to point out to someone how they've wronged us or how we feel like we've been wronged. But what I've learned over the years is it going to help the situation? Is it going to actually get you where you want to go? And so first you need to look and see, where do you want to go? What are you hoping to have? Are you wanting to have a relationship with this person, a healthy relationship that you're proud of? Or are you wanting to completely just separate and go your own way? Right? I think either one of those is good. When you stay in the middle and it's a constant fight, I don't think that's good for anyone. Right. And I've done both. I've wanted to, like, I really want to be healthy and I will do everything I can to be healthy. But before I did that, I had to, I actually did leave a message for my mom and said, I need a break. Right. I need time to heal me, because every time I would interact with her, it would cause me to hate who I was. And I would I would resent her so much, and I'd be so angry at her that I would allow it to affect who I was. And I would take it out on my children or my husband. And I at least had the ability to recognize it, and to say, this isn't who I want to be. And and I'm not saying that people should just dismiss someone and end a relationship, and that's not what I did. I reached out to her and I said, I love you, I want a relationship with you, but right now I need to heal.
You just hit the pause button and you declared some boundaries, right? Which is another really important point that I love you're bringing up for grief. I'm not sure any of our speakers have mentioned that, but it's so important, right? To give yourself permission to have boundaries, whatever they are, and you really don't have to justify them.
No, and the thing was, even with that, I knew one of the things that would be hardest for her, because again, we've always had a toxic relationship. It wasn't so much that she wasn't gonna be able to talk to me, it was my kids, right? I have 2 daughters, and at the time they were very young. And so even though I did hit that pause button and I was not having contact with her, I would send her pictures and I would send her cards and I would send her stuff, and
keeping her in the loop. Yeah,
I did, but it was always from a distance. And what I tell people is, love people from a distance if that's what you need to do. But honestly, holding on to any kind of hate, any animosity, any anger or disdain, all it is toxicity in you. Right. So if it means that for you to be able to love them, you need to have space, then get that space.
Yeah. That's really, really good advice. And I hope people who maybe have a hard time doing that can hear that it's really okay. And you can lift those boundaries when and if you ever feel ready.
And we did multiple times. Yeah. We would come back together, give it a try. Oh, nope, not ready yet.
Not yet.
And let's take another break, but I truly believed, and I had really hoped that at some point she and I would be able to have a healthy relationship, but it requires both people to be healthy for that to happen.
Yeah.
And unfortunately my mom passed away a little over a year ago, and it never ended up being the relationship I wanted it to be. Right. But I can take pride in knowing that I was who I wanted to be.
Good. Oh, what a really profound statement. It's so important, because at the end of the day, you have to like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be okay with you. Well, what a great lesson. Jenny, there's so much that you do and ways that you brought your experience out into the world. And I'm wondering if there's a free gift that you've offered,
Yeah.
if you could tell us about that. But I don't want to miss the chance for you to talk a little bit about the prevention work that you've also designed and put out there.
Yeah. So I will let people know, if you want to go to the website, go to growingoutofdarkness.org, and you can request to have a book sent to you, and it is an actual book. Excuse the notes written on this copy, but yeah. So Growing Through Grief, it's a guide for those who've lost a loved one to suicide. But I will say that last year we donated almost 1,000 copies. We don't do any marketing at all. I don't advertise at all. It's all word of mouth. And what I've been told is I need to change the title, the subtitle, that this really is a book that can apply to any loss. It's not even just death, but it's like, if you've been through something difficult,
Mm-hmm.
the tools that I have in here can be applied to anyone. And I think part of that is because I haven't talked about this, but part of that is because I am an adult who lived through being molested as a young child. And I think that kind of infused through the book is really that the healing I did when my dad died wasn't just healing from him. I was healing me and who I was. And so I think that if you're going through mental health issues, if you have had any kind of loss or trauma, please reach out to me, and I will get a book out to you. And then as far as the work that I'm doing, originally we started focus on just this mission of getting this book out to anyone that needed it. But over the years, it's evolved, because I've always believed that the best way to prevent suicide is to really understand wellness, and to focus on living a life you love. And I'm excited because in January, I actually partnered with my favorite mental health advocate. His name is Craig A. Miller, and he's the author of This Is How It Feels, which is a phenomenal book and can be found on Amazon. But he and I partnered, and originally it was just so we would do talks together. We'd go out and share our stories, and hopefully empower people to make decisions that can help their lives be better. And through the process, we realized we have so much more than just stories to tell. And so we've actually developed 4 programs.
Nice.
2 that are really focused on prevention.
Mm-hmm.
1 that is really on developing the foundation for understanding human health and how everything is intertwined and connected. And then the second one is on it's Fight for a Life You Love. And it really is, how do you overcome extreme adversity? And that applies to both chronic illness, chronic pain, or an acute crisis. Both of us have lived through all of those things. And then the other 2 programs are more post-vention. So we have one that is called This Is How It Feels, which is Craig's book. And it really is on helping people to find the good in every situation, helping them to really understand that our greatest gifts can come from our greatest struggles. And then our last program is Growing Through Grief, which is really on how do we grow through loss. And again, it's really any loss that we experience, because when we understand that all of these things impact our mental health, I don't want to just talk to people who've been impacted by suicide, or just people who've been impacted by a mental health crisis. When we lose someone to cancer, or a car accident, or any kind of unexpected death, or even when it's coming, again, that trauma, that grief can be overpowering, and it can cause someone else to go into a mental health crisis. So if we can help people avoid that, that's our goal.
That is it's actually somewhat revolutionary. I think too often we think of intervention happening, like you said, at the moment of crisis, and how beautiful to really inspire people to live their best life and therefore not wind up in crisis. That's such a gift. And so how do people get in touch with you and dive deeper and find out more about your courses and your work? Where do they find you?
Yeah. So growingoutofdarkness.org is the best way to get in touch with me. We do have an Instagram page. I'm terrible. I'm so busy with like what we're doing with developing everything that I'm so bad about. So if anyone's out there that loves Instagram and wants to help me out, feel free to let me know. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I am in awe of the work that we're doing. And sometimes I kind of am like, is this real? You know, it's just so beautiful, and I'm really excited to be doing it. But there are times where I'm like, I don't know how to get it all done. But yeah, so growingoutofdarkness.org. We also have on Facebook, we have a Facebook page, but definitely sign up for our newsletter and stay up to date with the things that we're doing and the programs that we're offering. You know, we're really trying to get in to present to everyone. You know, we've kind of set the, like, from age 12 to whenever, right? Like, it's all ages, and everything that we work on is set in a way to be very safe, and really it's meant to humanize it so people can truly identify and understand how this impacts all of us.
Beautiful. What an incredible legacy that I feel your father has left you, and that it's fueled so much healing for so many. And
Thank you.
his love is evident in that. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jenny. It's been a total honor, and I wish you so much just the best in all that you're endeavoring to do in this world.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me, give me the opportunity to share this message. Thanks.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.